everyone. We'll get started. My name is Jock Purtle. I'm the founder of Digital Exits. Quick survey. Who's here for information on selling? Quick hands. Thank you, Fletch. And then who's here for information on buying? Cool. So we're going to cover some valuation data. We release a report every year that analyzes some public data on online businesses that have sold. And I'm going to walk you through what we've put together for this year. And there might be a couple of stories in there that can help us out. So let's take this scenario. You've got two software businesses, and let's assume that they've got $50, $100 a year subscription, and it's relatively hands-off. You've got a team that's managing the business. They're probably over 5-7 years old, and the revenue is pretty stable. So it's probably been growing at 10 to 20% a year for the last 7 years, and there's not too much problems with the financials. Now you've got a similar scenario where the owner's looking to get out. However, you've got a different mindset in terms of why they're looking to get out and what they're willing to do to get the sale done. So the first business that we sold was exactly that scenario, and they got 2.3 times their seller's discretionary earnings. So I'll talk about that in a second. So 2.3 times their profit, that's what the owner took home. We sold that in 45 days, and the owner was happy. They freed up their time, and they used the cash to then grow their existing agency business. Now, the other seller was looking to invest in their new business, and they held onto the site for a year. They sat, trying to take a really high multiple, thinking that, that was the best thing to do. However, what ended up happening was it was sitting on the market so long that they ended up taking, the best offer that they could get. Now, the lesson there is, what's the opportunity cost of not selling? So you've got two businesses. One of them has certain prospects, the other one has other prospects. You need to be thinking to yourself, if I do or do not sell this business, how much can I grow, not grow my other company? Now, a lot of times buyers give us the question, why would I sell this business that's spitting off this cash and making good money? So probably the biggest thing is entrepreneur syndrome. I've got this other great opportunity, I've got this other better business, and we want to sell to take advantage of that. Then there's the standard, I'm burnt out, I'm sick of doing this. There's the need cash to invest in, whether it's personal or business. Obviously, you've got some partner disputes, the opportunity cost, which I don't think is talked about often enough, and then it's just standard retirement. So this is some data from businesses that we've sold, and you can see that majority of businesses sell within 120 days. So there's a relatively quick turnaround period, and at the moment there's a massive demand for online-based businesses, purely for the fact of scalability, low workload, virtual staff. They're generally a lot less hassle to run than a traditional business. Anything that's going to run over 180 days, which is 6 months, is generally going to be a sale price tag of probably over 2 or 3 million. And there's just a longer sales cycle in a larger business. So this is pulled out of the infographic that we created for the 2014 report, and what we did was we analysed 182 transactions, which gave a total transaction value of 83 million. And the numbers that we have here, sorry, let me pop back to that. So the first box, 2.06, that's the average multiple of earnings that a business sold for. The second box was the average price. The third box, I'm moving across the top row, was the median, and then the bottom left was the mode. So what we can see is there's a lot of businesses transacting in that sort of $50,000 to $300,000-$400,000 valuation mark. And if we give a breakdown of those 182 businesses, we can see that majority of them are e-commerce. We've then classified them into lead gen, software, service, advertising, and app. So a quick definition, e-commerce would be either dropship or fulfillment, anything to do with that. Lead gen is purely either CPA offers or lead forms. Software can be anything, whether it's desktop, mobile, any type of software. Service would be any type of B2B agency work. Advertising was purely content-based sites, and then app was all mobile app. So again, this data backs up the whole notion that a lot of the transactions are happening in that sub $250,000 mark. We can see that just under 100 transactions happened in that point, and about 25 transactions happened in the 250 to 500. 22 happened in the 500 to a million, and then obviously it peters off towards the larger transactions. In terms of the multiple per business model, so this is the multiple of profit, just to confirm. You can see the sliding scale by business model. So obviously, a content-based advertising site that's purely reliant on organic search is going to be a higher risk business than something that's either software or app-based. Service this year compared to last year was a little bit higher. Last year was running at about 2 times earnings. So people are seeing a bit more value in service-based businesses this year. E-commerce came down a little bit from 2.7 to 2.3 from last year. Software was a little bit lower as well. But generally you can see what types of business model that you own, and then you can plug it into what the data says and get a bit of an understanding of what the market's paying. So in terms of multiples per sale price, on that left axis is 1, 2, 3, 4, so that's 4 times EBITDA. You can see that larger businesses transacting in the 2 to 7 times range are selling for, it was an average of 3.7 times earnings. So your standard private equity company is probably going to look to acquire a business at sort of 3 to 5 times, and then the small to medium business buyer is probably going to look to buy in that sort of 2 to 3 times. So a private equity company can afford to pay a higher multiple for a higher cash flowing, more established business, purely because of the cash flow and the growth potential. And it's interesting to see the projection or the trajectory of the valuation multiple for the different price brackets. And this data has been very similar each year that we've run this report. I think the main reason that smaller sites are selling, or small businesses are selling for a lower price, is purely from a risk factor standpoint. Why buyers say no? There's always going to be a linear yes or no. Do I like this business? Do I not? What's the financial condition? Is it growing? Is it stagnant? Is it declining? Buying a business in selling CDs is obviously probably not a great purchase, whereas buying something in the CrossFit market, which is growing at rapid rates, is probably a better buy. That ties into the niche. People get stuck a lot in the due diligence phase. So when verifying revenue, when verifying traffic, etc., a lot of deals fall over at that point. Future potential. A buyer is really looking for a return on investment. They want to spend X cash and makes X plus 1 or X plus 5. Transferability. We've had some issues in the past of merchant accounts that haven't been transferable, which has caused the loss of a sale or problems with the sale. And then the seller. Do you trust them? There's plenty of people that are not very kosher and can tell a pretty good lie, and there's been a few scenarios where numbers have been faked and all of the above. So that's the summary of the main things why a buyer is going to say no. So that's all I've got for you today. We've got some questions about any of the data or anything in general. Sure.
So 182 companies you pulled in through there. Where did you get those companies' information from? I know I was over a couple years ago.
Yep. So that data, there's a website called Biz Buy Sell. It's the largest business for sale classified site in the world. So that data we purchased from them, and so that's from the internet business category. So that's where the data's from. So just a comment on that, we use that service for lead gen. All of the other bankers, merger and acquisition guys use that service for lead gen, and then you as a seller can also use that service to list your own business. Had one over here. Before tax, correct. So let's say that company sold for 4 times earnings. So it's 7 million divided by 4, which is like 1.75 or whatever the mass is. So that was the cash flow of the business. So that was before profit. So just to comment on before tax is correct. A comment on valuation regarding that, and we might get into a little bit of like detailed accounting. This is the non-discretionary profit of the business. So you might, spend $50,000 a year on going on a holiday and travel and all that good stuff that you can technically write off. Those expenses aren't included in the business for sale expenses. So you've got the books that you give to the tax office, and then you've got the books that you give to a business buyer. And so anything that's discretionary gets stripped out, and then you get what's really your true profit. Cool, thanks. Yeah. Yeah. Say it again.